Hello, everyone. I am just waiting a few minutes for everyone to filter in. And the numbers are streaming up. We'll just give it a couple of minutes. Takes a while to filter 2,500 people in. This chat's going to be busy, I think. Okay, let us kick off. People are still filtering through. I think we'll start. Yeah. So welcome, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Amy Baker. I am delighted to be joined with my co-chair, David Pillsbury, for a mega webinar, as we are terming it, The Rise of Student Recruitment 4.0. We all know the student recruitment landscape is changing very fast. We're seeing a lot of investment and innovation. And we also hear from many of you that this creates, to some extent, a sense of overwhelm. There's lots of companies all trying to provide best fit solutions. And some of the universities we speak to don't know where to turn. They don't know who to work with. They don't know how companies differ from each other. And we are hoping that the next hour and a half gives you the chance to get a much better idea of some of the panelists, who they are, the companies they represent, how they can work with you. And this is your chance to ask questions directly to our panelists too. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists. So first off, I have David Pillsbury, my co-chair. He is the originator of the term, the rise of the aggregators and the new student recruitment ecosystem. David, you're also DVC at Coventry International. Welcome.
Hi.
We have a veritable CEO panel for you, so let me whistle through the CEOs. Let's start with the lady, Lucy Stonehill, CEO of BridgeU. We then have, welcome Lucy. We then have Meti Basiri. He is CMO of ApplyBoard. Everyone knows ApplyBoard. We have a unicorn in the house. Welcome, Meti. We have Edwin Van Rest. He is CEO of StudyPortals, also an entrepreneur who's created the company himself when he wanted to resolve problems he found as an international student. A few years ago now, Edwin, is that right?
Correct.
And we have Edward Harcourt. He is Senior VP and Managing Director at UKEAS Enrollment Solutions here in the UK. Welcome, Edward.
Thank you.
We have Adam Roberts, Senior Vice President, at EduCo, joining us from Australia. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks for the promotion.
We have Pieter Funnekotter, CEO at UKEAS. We also have a new interloper. They've gone. Pieter, thanks for joining us from Taiwan.
Thanks for having me.
And who have I missed? Ryan, last but not least, Ryan, CEO and co-founder of Adventus, also joining us from Australia.
Hi, Amy, how are you going?
Thanks so much for all of you joining this panel. We've had a lot of interest, like I say, 2,500 people have registered. There is clearly a lot of people who want to hear more directly from you guys and from us in terms of navigating the student recruitment landscape as we come out of a pandemic era. David, first of all, let me come to you. Why do you think it's important for us to be having this event? Do you think it's important to be fostering the conversation and technology, the way technology might change? Why is it important, and what do you think?
Thanks, Amy. I don't think it's important. I know it's crucial. So engaging with the opportunities emerging in this space are what have driven Coventry's success over the recent past. So that's developing meaningful strategic relationships with organizations that advise and guide students as the line between what happens within universities and outside them is redrawn. The centrality of data analytics and developing deep insights about where your students are and how best to reach them. And then responding to the changes in student behavior. And I really want to reiterate that. That's at the core of this as they enrich their decisions and make choices based on data and digital approaches. And Coventry may be at the vanguard, but this is going to be transformative and relevant to everybody. And we're only just at the beginning of what are going to be massive changes as machine learning and AI really kick in.
Thanks, David. So let me tell you a bit more about how the next hour and a half this mega webinar is going to work. You are welcome to ask questions. Please use the Q&A function. And you can also vote for other people's questions. We have a lot of you attending, and it's going to be quite hard to filter all the questions. So if you feel that someone has asked exactly the question that you were going to ask, please vote for that question instead. And we will be trying to come to those questions in order of hierarchy of popularity to some extent. So please keep voting. We also have a couple of polls we're going to be popping up. I'm going to pop one up right now, actually, to kick off. Let me do that now. It's anonymous, so you can anonymously vote. These are, what are your main concerns around the changes in the student recruitment landscape? So there, I'm just leaving that there while a few people vote. And while we do that, I also want to share my screen because David and I came up with a diagram, a schematic to give some context to some of the companies operating in the student recruitment landscape. So I thought I'll share that now while that poll is going on and just talk you through our sort of view. And this is certainly not exhaustive, but indicative in terms of some of the companies, how they intersect with each other, their value proposition, where they fit within that sort of wider funnel. We don't like the word funnel, but you'll see the diagram does indicate a funnel. I'll talk you through that briefly while we're also polling. So, I mean, I introduced Lucy first off, CEO of BridgeU. She is also an entrepreneur who founded a company because of her experience, not really feeling well advised and ready for her tertiary decisions after an international school education. BridgeU, C Alpha, Unifog, well, these are companies who are really trying to engage students at this very early stage in their experience and journey as potentially globally mobile students. I would say companies who probably weren't, there was not many companies doing something so detailed and dedicated at this early stage a decade ago. We have organic search of institutions, we have StudyPortals, IDP, again, plenty of operators in this space, but these are companies who have global scale and really try hard to work around student counselling, course fit and advice. We have bridging programs, or what we might refer to as pathway providers. Adam, I would put EduCo in that sphere, but a lot of these commercial companies are working very assiduously to stay very close to students and help students decide and navigate their experience as they go forward in deciding where to study and why. THE Student, we've mentioned them, they are a finalist actually in the Pioneer Awards. THE was originally a source of intelligence, information and rankings, and they have now pivoted to become a student ecosystem in their own right, and of course are working with some of our panelists today. We have the agent ecosystem, the backbone of the industry. TC Global, for example, has pivoted from largely face-to-face to tech first. So we've seen a huge amount of innovation, and obviously Pieter will be speaking more about that, representing UKEAS here today. We have the aggregators, a term that probably wasn't being used 5 years ago, but we have tech-based platforms that are trying hard to enable submission and application at scale, often using the agency channels, enabling agents to also improve the way they run their business. And then we, of course, have Enrollment Solutions, QS Enrollment Solutions. Edwin Harcourt is here, also a finalist in the Pioneer Awards. But there's quite a few companies really focusing on that application to enrollment space. UniQuest, Enrollee, there are plenty of companies who are looking at using AI, machine learning and data to really help universities get a better handle on who might apply, but then who might enroll and what you can do to move those metrics. Okay, let me stop sharing that. I know a colleague of mine can also share that in the chat. Let's go back to the polls. And well, yeah, I'm going to end the poll. So end poll, we are looking like decision-making overwhelm, exactly what David and I have been saying. So 39% of those who have voted have said your main concerns are deciding which platforms to use. Other concerns, quality management of applications gets 34% of votes, overlap with existing agent networks. 36% of you are concerned, I suppose, about navigating how to work with new partners and your existing networks. 38%, the risk of time, financial investment for no slow return. So I think we would all agree that, I mean, I can relaunch that at the end as well, actually. I can go back to that poll, but I think we would all agree plenty of question marks out there in the minds of some of our audience. Okay, let's go straight to some more questions then. Pieter, I'm going to come to you first. You represent a long-standing and successful student counselling business, a sort of veteran of student counselling and advice. And maybe you could tell us more, for those who don't know, how UKEAS is moving on this journey as the industry seems to be becoming far more sort of tech reliant, and also what you think about your new EdTech bedfellows operating in the space.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Amy and David, for the invitation today. It's great to be part of the tech focus, which we think we are. Much appreciation for having us on the panel. I think that the transition actually to digital international student recruitment has been building for quite a long time, but the pandemic really accelerated that, and especially for UKEAS. We ended up having to move a lot of our services and processes online. Luckily, we were in the process of doing that anyway, but instead of having a 4 or 5 year plan to do it, we had to do it in a month or two. So that was a good kick for us. And I think ultimately that's positive for not just ourselves, but for the industry as a whole. The pandemic's actually been pretty good for us. We didn't lay off any staff during the pandemic, and we actually grew our team considerably, both our tech teams, but also our counseling teams and our offices. Not to say there haven't been challenges, primarily in COVID safe havens like Southeast Asia and East Asia, which no longer are, sadly. But those are places where we had a lot of reluctance for students to actually get on airplanes and go overseas. Fortunately, though, for 2021, it'll be our best year in nearly 30 years, and we're looking at least double-digit growth over 2019. So we're pretty happy with how the pandemic's treated us, all things considered, despite the stresses that have come along with it. Looking at technology, though, and specifically, we think there are 4 areas where we really see our staff, students, and partners benefiting from this shift to technology first. The first one's on hyper-personalization. So we're lucky to have 28 years of data on our students to help our counselors really give a better, more flexible, more personalized service once we feed that into our data algorithms. So in the future, our students will have access to a lot of that data in advance of counseling, and it's going to help our counselors deliver a much more customized counseling experience for students, whether that's face-to-face or if they're being counseled remotely. The next one's on convenience and digital first experiences. So while we've always counseled some students remotely, I mean, we've had to, when you operate in Lagos or Manila, we've been counseling students remotely in those markets for, well, since we started, thanks to the heavy traffic congestion. But our new platform, I think, is going to really help boost the quality of service we provide those students. So it'll be a nearly as good experience remotely as it will be compared to face-to-face. The other key on this area is to reduce the friction in our application processes, and that'll really help our growth. And I know that this is an important one for a lot of students, reducing the pain point of the application process. So I think a lot of students find it hard to submit 5, 6 applications if they are applying to that many universities. And we think there's a real place for technology and how we can tap in with our university partners and just using tech to make that whole system way better than it has been. The third point's on service automation. So we know that a lot of our processes could be more efficient. And with machine learning, we can really pinpoint the high quality leads for our team and for our partners to focus on. Within the organization, within UKEAS, that's really important because it allows our counselors to focus on what they're good at, which is counseling. For universities, that's really important so that we can reduce the number of time wasting applications. I mean, it's in no one's best interest to submit an application that's never going to materialize. But perhaps most importantly for the audience today, we're building a portal for our partners that'll create information from our data. So we've surveyed our partners, we've had lots of conversations about what they actually want from tech from us. And they've told us that what they really want is to not have to dig through menu after menu in a portal to find what they're looking for, but instead work with us to present the key information that they need, such as where they sit within competitor sets, what students are saying about them, and future trends within certain markets. So we're also looking at some tools for universities that aren't specific to UKEAS. So things like how to interpret UKVI visa data, just stuff that's useful for a university staff member. Now, on the question about working in industry alongside aggregators, I might get a little controversial here, and I know that's dangerous as I'm the first person to be speaking, but I think it would be hard for me not to say. And I think that the real key through all of this evolving industry is that we need to distinguish between what smart technology is, which we really, really are in favor of, and what the aggregator model of, which is something that we've actually think we've seen before with master subagents that have been around for many, many years. Taking a big subagent network and sending it to universities isn't something particularly new. So I think that's quite an important distinguishing feature. So part of this conversation for us is having chats with university partners who are already working with aggregators and seeing how we can avoid some of the issues that they're seeing. And those have been on things like quality control, brand protection, applicant to enrollment ratios, and the one that perhaps didn't come out in the recent poll, but I think is very important, which is increased commission demands after a year or so of partnership. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the aggregators today on how they're going to deal with those issues. And having worked myself for Canadian and UK universities, as well as education agencies, for me, it's really tough to see how the aggregator model is going to really allow for a return on investment for those investors who are pumping, tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in, when there are extra layers of control that are needed to maintain standards, as well as the financial contributions to subagents. So back to our side with the tech development, our real goal is to find the right fit for university students and counselors. And we know that our universities want to speak more with our counselors. And if we can find a way to do that via platform, they're going to be very happy with that. So what we've done, we've partnered with Vivi, which is a startup led by Fani Vimuri. Fani is the former Chief Information Officer at Kaplan International, who's done great work with Kaplan over the years. And we think we're on track to building what's an industry-leading platform that connects students directly with unis and counselors. So we're really excited about that and really excited about the partnership. So yeah, that's where I think we are at the moment, Amy.
Thank you, Pieter. And when will that platform go live?
Oh, well, it's going to be an incremental process. So it's all being built via microservices. So the initial platform for universities, version 0 as we're calling it, because it is fairly basic at the moment, is being tested at the moment by 7 different universities. And we're hoping it'll go live next week. I did tell universities 4 weeks ago that it would go live by the end of May. So yeah, these things do occasionally get a little bit delayed along the way. But we're just there on that initial version. And then beyond that, we'll see monthly improvements based on our user group with universities who are feeding in what they want.
And does the platform have another name, or is it under the UKEAS?
It's UKEAS.partners. That's the name at the moment, but we are rebranding. So come September, it'll be called something else .partners. I can't tell you what just yet, but that's part of our evolution as a company. We're moving towards what we hope will be a market leading agency when it comes to advice. And yeah, this is a big part of that.
Great, thank you. And sorry, I do want to move on, but just for those who don't know UKEAS, if you could just give us a sense of the sort of scale of the students that you are currently working with on an annual basis.
Yeah, so we this year will help over 10,000 students apply to universities. Of those, between 4,500 and 5,000 are expected to enroll. They're predominantly from markets outside of your usual market, so China. Our biggest source market is Nigeria, and we've just entered India, but we have 30 offices in 9 different countries around the world. And we're planning on adding a 10th by the end of the year. Stay tuned about that one. And okay. I guess the other big difference about us is...
Sorry, I need to move on now. Sorry, that was just in case people don't know, but I do want to, we've got lots to get through and I can see questions already piling up. Edward, let me come to you next. In sunny Liverpool, not as hot as sunny Kent, but sunny Liverpool. Tell us more about QS Enrollment Solutions. And you obviously are another business which has been around for a long time, but has innovated a lot. And I think you're quite excited about your machine learning. So tell us more about that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Nice of you to start with the old timers on the call here. It's great to be on the panel today. And look, this is a really exciting moment for our sector, despite the ongoing challenges of the pandemic. With new players bringing innovation and new investment into our industry, I think it's only a good thing. But I wondered if I could recenter the debate a little bit, because my view of the present moment, the accelerated digitization of the marketplace, is that when we talk of the rise of the aggregators, David, what we're witnessing now, I think, is a third wave of aggregation. I'm a historian, so bear with me here for a couple of moments. The first wave of aggregation happened in the mid-20th century when government agencies and scholarship bodies brought a degree of structure and support to the opportunity to study internationally. Think of the Colombo Plan in Australia. The second wave dates to the decades either side of the 21st century, which is when QS got going, when information about international higher education became much more readily available in the form of web portals, ranking information, and comparison sites. And a number of us on the call today contributed, as did individual universities, of course, to the welter of information that is now readily available on the internet. And then today, what we're seeing is the aggregation of exchange with the digitization of the marketplace. So what QS has today as a second wave aggregator of information about universities is big data. So on topuniversities.com, we attract over 55 million unique visitors a year. QS digital events this year so far have attracted over 130,000 registered attendees. We launched qschina.cn in 2019. We've got over 100,000 followers on Chinese social media assets. And at QS Enrollment Solutions, the business I run in QS, we manage approximately 80,000, mainly international, but increasingly domestic student enrollments from first inquiry to onboarding on campus, or indeed, as has been the case this last year, online. And these numbers are simply too large for us to handle through traditional counseling methods. So what we've been doing at QS for the last 3 to 4 years is to spend a lot of time thinking about predictive analytics. It's not been straightforward. We've made some mistakes. It's taken us a while to get there. But we think now, in the last 6 to 9 months, that we've really made a bit of a breakthrough in developing nuanced machine learning algorithms. And yeah, Pieter focused on this at UKEAS. And why have we done this? Well, it's primarily to look at returning a greater return on investment to our university partners and clients. It's about improving conversion rates, decreasing the length of the applicant pipeline, and improving the quality of the applicant experience. And just 2 features of this, Amy, if I may just illustrate briefly. One is for our Enrollment Solutions clients. We typically work with clients in the Australian and the UK sectors at the moment, but we're expanding into EU territories and have our eye also on North America, now that their political chaos has sort of settled down a little bit. But what we've been doing is to develop bespoke machine learning models for our individual clients, drawing, yes, on our data, but also drawing on the data points that our university clients have got on those applicants. And our models can accommodate up to 200 data reference points, both demographic, behavioral. We can look at how they interact with us and constantly tune up and improve these machine learning models in order to drive a stronger conversion rate and make sure that we're focusing our efforts on the students who are most likely to succeed.
Right.
The other thing.
Yeah, okay, briefly, because I want to get through everyone and then
Great.
deal with the question.
Okay. Thanks. Just briefly then, Amy, on the second development is really around live chat. I mean, students are now just as likely to engage with live chat as they are to answer the telephone. And but the problem with live chat is that it's only on typically during business hours. And so we've been weighing into chatbot technology, which I know gets a really bad rap. If you really go deeply into the linguistics of conversational design, then you can actually develop some pretty sophisticated chatbot solutions that actually make sure that you've got an always-on service for international applicants, and that they, because I know that there is a concern when you talk about algorithms, that you're actually disadvantaging some applicants who don't fit the profile of previous successful applicants. But what you've got with chatbot technology is an opportunity for any applicant at any time to put their hand up and say, count me in. I'm really interested in this opportunity. I'd like you to reach out to me and have a counseling conversation around where I go next. So those are the 2 areas that we've been developing during the
I feel it's important to have them side by side. So you've got the sort of the tech machine learning data, but then you've got the students who can just interact if they are maybe not fitting into your usual processes.
Yeah, and that's key. Otherwise, you're just bringing a kind of algorithmic solution to what is a highly personalized journey that international applicants have embarked on.
which I think David might have a question on that later if we get to that. But first, thank you to Edwin for giving a good sort of summary of the way the business is moving. Meti, I will come to you next. ApplyBoard, I don't think I really need to introduce ApplyBoard, but in case there are some people who haven't heard of ApplyBoard, of course, it is a unicorn in terms of its valuation and its ambition. So tell us more about the way you work with smaller agents to build the recruitment ecosystem, and why do you think you're transformational in this regard?
Thank you so much, Amy, and the rest of the folks on the call. I hope everyone that they are participating today are safe, themselves and the family one. It's a great question, but I will start it with this. I think like 6 years back, it's kind of answering to Pieter. Well, we have started going to a school and saying that, hey, we do work with the businesses. I don't call it agents because I don't think one thing if this industry does well is removing the agent as a word. So we work with recruitment partner. It was a crime. I was pitching to a schools. The schools wasn't really much accepting that. And as much as there were a lot of bigger B2B player, but it wasn't open to that. So one thing that I'm very proud that actually ApplyBoard could change the industry perception around that, hey, platform that can put quality first could be successful. So things has evolved in the last 6 years, unbelievable. I can't imagine 6 years ago, it was hard to talk to a school. Now there is, every week we see a copycat that's coming up and saying that we're the next ApplyBoard or next X company. And the answers to that question, I think like at ApplyBoard, we always have focus and we will focus empowering our students and making education accessible for them. And that has been our main focus. And as a result of that, we always thought, and we always gonna think how we can enable and empower our recruitment partner, regardless of how big they are, that they can put the students and provide the students best option that the students become successful. I think if you look at it, that would be the approach, not approach of how much commission do you make per school, not approach of, oh, apply for this school because it's more or less. Then at the end, if the students are successful, as a former international student, I think I can say it on this call, if the students are too successful, the next wave of the students will be yours. So that would be more of my answer to the first question.
And I mean, another follow-up question would be, how are you going with, you have an ambition to scale, and how will you maintain the bona fides of the applications you're processing as you also seek to grow significant volume?
Thanks, Amy. It's actually something that I've been very vocal and start talking very publicly about it. We have done numerous of things, and obviously in the short period of time, I cannot talk in the details how much ApplyBoard does in terms of making sure applicants going through our platform are meeting all the minimum requirements. Having said that, the easiest things that I think everyone can do is like putting some number beside each other. Visa approval rate of Canada in 2020 was 64%. ApplyBoard visa approval was 25% higher than that. So if you really think about it, if you don't put the quality first, you will never achieve close to 90% visa approval. And we're not one country. We've been recruiting from 125 plus country. So I think that it speaks to the word that we have been and we're going to continue focusing on quality. But we didn't never stop there. We actually start seeing what are the next challenges to the industry, such as fraud happening in the acceptance. Then we went to invest millions of dollars in ApplyProof. That would be a digital box, which I think everyone get to know that TOEFL and PTs are verifiable on ApplyProof. We recently launched our ABCC course that provide counselors or agency more knowledge around how to recruit the students. I think what ApplyBoard does is not only for our applicant, we always stand back and look at where are the gaps in this industry. And that's where we're gonna go invest. We don't just think of ours. I think if you invest in the industry and you focus on making the industry more transparent, the benefit's gonna be for everyone, but definitely as a market share and the market leader, the benefit will be ours too.
Great, thank you. I'm going to move straight on to Ryan because ApplyBoard, Adventus, they both start with an A. You're both wearing your t-shirts that suggest that you're an EdTech entrepreneurs. I did say earlier that is the uniform for EdTech entrepreneurs. But Ryan, for those who don't know, please tell us more about the Adventus business model, and maybe you could explain how it maybe compares to ApplyBoard?
Thanks very much. And Edward, I think I'm an old timer as well. It's just I'm trying to look a bit younger wearing a t-shirt today. And I don't know if I'm pulling it off or not, but it's 10:30 here in Australia at the moment as well. So hopefully I make some sense. But great to be here today as well. And I just want to thank both yourself, Amy and David. I think the opportunity for us all to be here today, you know, there's lots of talks about disruption and unicorns and these types of things. It's really around how are we all going to add value to the industry and what problems are we all trying to solve here as well, which I think is obviously crucial as part of this discussion. But look, you know, from our perspective, we've taken a different view around, I guess, how we're going to be supporting the industry. And I guess, you know, when you start thinking around, firstly, on the institution side of things, you know, it's around how do we find quality students from diverse countries, and ultimately help the student make the right decision, so that, you know, there's still statistics of up to 1 in 5 students often will change institutions when they actually land in their kind of destination country. That means somewhere we're letting the student down, right? So when we started looking at it, we said, okay, rather than being an aggregator, we wanted to create a neutral exchange within the industry, literally like to be able to connect the institutions and agents around the world. And that's why we took the business model of being able just passing the commission through, because we've got absolutely no bias where the students go. We just want the student to get to the right university. But based on that, it's been phenomenal around the access to data that has never been accessed before, which I think is the most interesting thing. And for something that regulators, institutions, and everyone in the industry should be really trying to get around, because we've never actually had that transparency before. So when we're supporting institutions now, we're talking around how many times they've been preferenced. If they didn't go to that university, where did they go to? Application turnaround time, live student mobility data, all this information that enables intelligence for institutions to be able to connect better. And at the same time, with unfortunate events of COVID, you know, universities haven't been able to get on planes and been able to find agents. And there's a whole range of other challenges. Is that how are we going to be able to connect both of the industry together? So, I mean, we're really proud. For every 10 applications that are sent to institutions at the moment, 9 are getting offers as well. And we're actually seeing, because we're that neutral marketplace that sits there at the moment, institutions are, some of our partners are encouraging agents to actually access their courses through the marketplace because of the high conversion. But at the same time, also it's very hard to manage lots of agents from around the world. And that's the biggest challenge. We want diversity. Generally with institutions, it's still an 80-20 rule. So how do we access diversity from a quality perspective and from a neutralities perspective? So I think we're really trying to play that part in the market. And that's seen nearly 1,200 institutions now join our platform, and we'll have close to 6,000 recruiters, as Meti would say, on the platform by the end of the year. So we're really proud around what we've been able to achieve in such a short period of time.
And I mean, I know you're an entrepreneur you've had a success before, so you have worked in education for a while. I'm interested, do you think there'd be a distinction between recruiters who would work with you and ApplyBoard, or do you think they might work with both?
I think that a lot of these I think there's a lot of different platforms that are entering the market, and I think that they might be in the end working with different platforms for different reasons as well. I think, you know, for us, we're really thinking around supporting the institution from an agent management perspective. So we're a two-sided marketplace rather than kind of a technology-driven aggregator as sense. So we do see ourselves more as that kind of exchange in the market as well. So I think they'll use different methods. I think everyone, like Pieter's business, is phenomenal, and Edward, everyone's got some amazing areas that they're supporting. So I don't think it's one of these winner takes all and we've got the next Amazon kind of coming through. I think we've all got our niches and our expertise that we're going to be able to support the industry as we go along.
Thank you, Ryan. We're talking of different niches. I'll come to you, Lucy. I mean, I was really interested when I met you and you told me about your own journey. So tell us more about BridgeU, and also, because we're talking about tech and student recruitment, tell us how tech sort of empowers the BridgeU model and how you try to serve students. yourselves.
Yeah, thanks very much, Amy, and thank us, of course, David, for including me on this panel. It's a fascinating thing hearing everyone introduce themselves and talk about their various approaches. And I agree. I think we BridgeU are very proud to be very deep within a specific niche. So by way of introduction, I'm the founder and CEO of BridgeU. We are the market leading provider of university and careers guidance software and services to international schools. I've myself been working in international schools for the better part of a decade. And we, as a business, BridgeU has very much, I think, grown and evolved with the sector. And I think, frankly, what's happened over the course of the last 10 years is international schools have sort of very much ballooned and become, a very important niche and a very much more sort of visible sort of subsector of the overall kind of K-12 market globally. Just to sort of frame the market for those who aren't sort of maybe as familiar, international schools today number about 12,000 and are expected to grow to 16,000 by 2026, which means they will sort of collectively teach about 10 million students. And we believe that by this point in time, international school graduates could comprise up to 2/3 of all globally mobile candidates for undergraduate admission. So, that's very much our vision, to continue to kind of lead the sector and continue to support that community of students who are sort of highly diverse, but also distinct and common to one another insofar as they are pursuing a very sort of similar type of schooling with a very similar type of ethos. So just a bit more context then about BridgeU. So today, after a sort of seven year slog, we work with international schools in 123 countries. And fundamentally, we are, really very simply, I suppose, in the business of guiding 14 to 18-year-olds in their transition to the right post-secondary environment for them. And we do this in a few distinct ways, and I think critically by engaging a number of very key stakeholders. So, of course, the secondary school is our client, so we partner very closely and very deeply with those secondary schools. And today we work with about 6,000 international school advisors, college counselors, careers advisors, and we help fundamentally power their in-school college and career guidance provision. And we also work very extensively to ensure that those advisors themselves have the appropriate sort of toolkit and curriculum to make them successful in delivering that guidance to the students they work with. For students, again, BridgeU offers a highly structured 24 to 36 month decision-making journey, which fundamentally supports those students through the early stages of discovery through to, in many cases, application delivery. In the last admission cycle, for context, we've delivered about just shy of 100,000 applications directly to institutions on behalf of our partner high schools.
And can I ask, so before BridgeU existed, those 100,000 applications, were they all just hugely fragmented, or trying to sort of map their own way through the process?
Well, before BridgeU existed, guidance was happening how it is in most high school environments, right? It is very much a conversation. It's, my sister or my uncle went to this institution. Is that something I should consider? So it's fragmented, but I think it's also still quite word of mouth led as well. And, I think a really critical part of this dialogue and discussion for us is how we actually leverage sort of technology to drive and empower the advisors who are within those schooling environments, and ultimately providing that support to 60 to 200 students in a given academic year.
Yeah, no, I think it's really fascinating. And like I said at the beginning, there's a few businesses who are also enabling sort of direct applications after the counselling process being enabled by tech. So yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, Edwin, we have known each other for a while. You've been around as well. You've been around for a while. Tell us more about StudyPortals. I know you have a lot of data. Started off as pure core search, or for Enrollment Solutions. Tell us a bit more about your journey. And I'm also, I have another question, but start with that.
All right, thanks, Amy, and thanks, David, and thanks for everybody for putting this together. We are all different, but still a little bit the same somehow. That's clearly proven by the poll, and I think it's good to have this discussion. So I hope I will be helpful. And it's also just good to discuss AI, because there are lots of opportunities out there, but ultimately we're talking about people's lives. So I think we also have to be very careful not to create unwanted bias there. And I want to also congratulate the panel, and probably also the audience of everybody here, because even though we're different, I think we're all in it because of the same purpose, right? We all have a similar purpose, often born by personal experience. We're all operating in the most meaningful industry in the world, if you ask me. Now, our platform is quite different. So we focus on one thing, and that is to directly help students making the best decisions. And if you look at the world, so there are in 2020 about 1 million international student commencements in the world that study in English at a degree program. 70% of those students, they prefer to apply on their own and engage with the institution directly. About 30% of the students use some kind of middle party to apply. Some of them use agents, some of them use counselors, and they play a very valuable role in our industry. And it's also a good way to monetize student enrollment, so that's why we see a lot of activity there. Primarily, we focus on the 70% of students that want to choose themselves and go to the institution directly. And institutions have a big interest in that as well, because these have a much bigger geographic diversity and are typically more independent students, but also more difficult to get an influence on their own. So there we are fundamentally different. If you want to help students to make the best decisions, you need to be comprehensive. So we needed to work out a model that works for a broad range of institutions. Of course, for institutions that are eager to grow internationally, but also for institutions that are super selective, for institutions that are very tight on costs, and some even have no tuition fee, and then also for institutions that are risk averse or want full control of the information they put out in the world and their recruitment funnel. So that's what we had to fix, and there we have a 100% digital model. So we're not mixing in too much human intervention in that process, which puts institutions fully at control of all the information, 100% transparent, and that you can change that with a push of a button in real time all the time. So manage their risk well, and not only manage their risk, also because we're fully digital, we are 10 or maybe 100 times more efficient in the sense of the cost to actually deliver an enrollment. So that helps us so that we can contribute to driving down the costs of acquisition for institutions. Now, we also believe enrollment is not the end goal. Enrollment is only the starting point, really. So one of the ways we leverage AI, but also our rich information, is to get students really to the right spot and follow up on that. And that has contributed for our retention rates to be 3.5 times higher than the average international student in the classroom.
Can I ask a question? Do you believe that 70% will grow, so more students will want to apply directly in the future?
Good question. I think there's a lot of space in the middle. So this kind of black and white, and I think so Lucy's model, for instance, fantastic model. I think that's already a little bit in the middle because it's more on the counseling side, and so I think that those models will come together. We also have seen many of the people in the room, I think, have tried to be like the fully online, fully virtual agent. That's proven to be a model that's really hard. Students are quite made up if they want to go directly or if they want to use an agent, often driven by which country they're going to or from which cultural background and they come from. What we see, for instance, even though we focus on those 70% of students that are still, let's say, the direct enrolls, quite a number of the students that are in agent offices getting the help from agents for application processing or visa or other very important things use StudyPortals for their decision. Because they are like, okay, well, let's check the data on that. So they still use our platform to make the decision early on, but also when they have a few offers and have to make their final choice.
Okay, that's interesting. And I'm just going to ask a question. We've got lots of questions, and I've just seen that the most popular question actually at the moment is this is for everyone, and I know we haven't come to you, Adam, yet, so I'll come back to you so everyone understands. EduCo, but I thought let's just answer this question now, because 72 people have endorsed this question. What do you guys think of the face-to-face recruitment? My opinion is that platforms are mostly good for branding opportunities or to reach out to the right students, but conversion is really another thing. So I'm going to quickly take this question now while we're on this topic. So that would suggest our anonymous attendee thinks face-to-face is still important for a lot of students. Would you agree with that, Edwin? Or are you saying that a lot of students are really happy just to do the whole thing digitally?
No, I think face-to-face is important to a large set of students. And it depends on where they come from, where they're going to. That is now probably about 30%. So it's very important. Will it become more important? I'm not sure. I think if you look at the trends in other industry, more and more people are getting comfortable, even high ticket, high merit, high interest buying decisions, to take them on the base of digital platforms and digital information.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, I also see the great value that agents are providing in the market and face-to-face counseling, and that it's not going to go away. So certainly sustainable model, I think. It's just the face-to-face counseling piece is just a model that we choose not to do, because we really want to disrupt and have something that's, let's say, 100 times more efficient and not fulfilling the full needs of all students, but to be laser sharp on those that get to either don't need it or get that face-to-face component elsewhere, or get it from the institution directly.
Sure. Pieter, I'm going to come to you. I know not everyone can answer every question, but I'd love to hear your take on that too.
Yeah, well, perhaps unsurprisingly, we think it is still important as an agency with 30 offices around the world, and ones that we're renovating at the moment, because we do feel the need for face-to-face contact. What I think, there's a couple of ways to answer that question. The first one is that it really depends on the market. So in Taiwan, for instance, yeah, you can't get rid of face-to-face. You know, we ran a hybrid event with barely any universities there and just iPads to go walk up to and talk to, and we still had, you know, over 1,000 students attend. So clearly there is that demand for face-to-face in certain markets, more than in others. But I think the really important thing is that what we're seeing is a shift in what face-to-face means. So it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago, face-to-face was you'd walk in, you'd sit in a queue, wait for a university rep, have a conversation, they might handwrite you an offer letter and off you'd go, or you do the same with a counselor or whatever it may be. I think that's changing. And I think really what matters is small scale events and community. So that's something we're really looking heavily at is what community is. And we're working with TAP now, similar to Unibuddy, TAP based in Australia. Based in the UK, I think, but with an Australia office. And you know, we've seen a big uptake in some of our markets on that. You know, a lot of students really interested in speaking with fellow students. So once we're allowed to reopen all our offices for group events, which we're very excited about, we know that that works with alumni as well, and with current students who are back visiting or whatever. So, you know, yeah, I think face-to-face is really important. And actually the piece that's the most important is on that visa rate. So, you know, last year our visa approval rate was over 99% globally for the UK. You know, you can't do that unless you're sitting down with a student and having a conversation with them and really getting a feel for that student. And I think that that's one of the big pieces here that's really missing. And for UK partners who are following, you know, that's something really important for their, you know, UKVI rating to make sure that that's retained. And then the other side's on the conversion. We know for a fact that the students we see most often are the ones that convert at the highest rate. So we want to continue bringing them into activities, events. They might be in our offices, they might be somewhere else, they might be online even, some of them. But continuing that engagement is something that's really important. And we know that once that face-to-face contact's been established with a counselor or university, the conversion rate, you know, doubles or triples. I don't actually have the stat on me, but it's considerably higher.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Meti, briefly from your side as well. So would you say most of your recruiters, partners are still face-to-face counseling?
I have a very different opinion around that question. So I think face-to-face value, you need to ask what is the value first before saying would it exist or not. And that value has changed. But if we sit here and today we think 7,000+ islands exist in Philippines, and we think schools or agents can be presented in 7,000 islands, I think we're fooling ourselves. I don't think face-to-face recruitment is going to be the way to go. Having said that, as I said it this previously, our recruitment partner is going to involve with new things that really value the students where they need. But I think like Pieter said, it face-to-face has changed. Pretty much a last 15, 16 months, very rare number of a school could have traveled, or very rare number of agents could have met their students. So I think it's changing much faster. I don't believe recruitment partner is going to be gone. Having said that, I think there would be a lot of new ways of recruiting the students. And the students are getting smarter and smarter and smarter. As long as you have access to your smartphone anywhere, you can apply to a school. It's just a matter of which school is the best for me. So. All
right, thank you. Adam, thanks for being so patient. I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to hand over to David, who's also being patient and has lots of questions. Adam, EduCo, I mean, I would describe you as, I guess, pathway provider originally, but you understand that partnership piece between the agents and the schools, and now you sort of have a technology solution yourself. So tell us briefly about what EduCo accelerated.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So we have been accused of being a pathway provider before, but we actually started in Australia 2010 in Melbourne by owning and operating our own degree granting institutions, and we since expanded from that into running university branch campuses, also on-campus pathways in the USA and Europe, and also providing services into universities. So for example, in North America, we run the agent networks for several large public universities, and also put teams of staff into their campus to work on international student conversion, integration and success programs. So we really identify as being an education provider, first and foremost. But my role with the group over 10 years was to build the international marketing and recruitment team. And, you know, we put staff into 20 countries and turned them into channel experts to support the fly in, fly out staff. But we really started on the journey into digital and data about 2 years ago, and we brought in some data science expertise, but we didn't do it to help recruitment. We were actually looking for ways to improve the retention and graduation rates of our students. And the first thing we learned that we accidentally put together a really unique data set where we had students from more than 100 countries going into all different levels of study in multiple destinations, and also coming through different channels, coming through agents, coming through aggregators, coming through B2C platforms, coming direct. And we also found that the unique bit about the data was we had the student outcomes. So we had the profiles, the recruitment channel, and the student outcomes. And we worked out that the best way to improve retention rates and graduation rates was to make sure right at the start of the process, we got the right students into the right programs. And so we came up with the idea for our Accelerate platform. And, you know, we had about 3,000 recruitment agents and feeder institutions working with us. We put them on the platform. We launched that at the start of this year, and really quickly it took off. So really quickly, we got to about 30,000 course searches being run each week. And we're starting to notice the results flowing through now. So incremental improvements in conversion rates, cut down in admissions turnaround time by about 30% in some of our schools. And also we found that it's a really useful tool for institutions that are really restricted in what they can do with budget cuts and staff not able to travel. So we have,
how are you reducing the turnaround time? Because they know they have a better idea of who to focus on primarily in terms of.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that our system's doing. So first of all, really simple one, it's checking for completeness before an application is submitted. So it won't allow an incomplete application to come through, but also running eligibility checks on the applications that come through. But thirdly, automating some of the admissions process. So we've built an automated risk assessment system where we classify students based on their risk, and that can then respond to the agent or the student with the next step in the application process, depending on the risk profile of the student. And that takes up to 30% of the time of our admissions teams in various institutions around the world. So it's a combination of things that digital's helping to do that, that weren't possible before we had the platform.
Okay. David, I think you'd agree, it's quite mind-boggling, isn't it? All this data and potential value of data, the way data can be applied, help transform recruitment. I mean, as an education leader in higher ed, where do you think people start in trying to navigate the landscape?
Well, I don't think it's mind-boggling. I think it's a challenge that we need to get to grips with, and that's the purpose of this webinar, which is to create a discourse between the sector, which is, as you said at the beginning, Amy, struggling with the complexity, and the services that these guys are offering. And I think all I would say is my concern is that people are trying to put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah. With applications back at pre-pandemic levels, people will assume that we can go back to business as usual. Well, we can't. Okay, as a lot of the panelists have said, all COVID has done is accelerate fundamental changes that were happening anyway. We heard about from Pete that this stuff they began 6 or 8 years ago, beginning the digital drive. I saw that myself as I went around Coventry's agents. It's a complete misstatement to say that, I think in Meti's defense, to say that ApplyBoard is doing anything new in terms of aggregation. Again, as Pete said, aggregation in terms of using sub-agents been around for 5 or 6 years. You know, it's just that in the past, people used to do it with Excel spreadsheets and telephones. And now there is more power being able to do it in a systematic way, but it's a complete mistake to get obsessed with aggregators and agents. Now, I'm not an ideologue pushing any agenda. You know, I haven't seen some vision of a digital promised land. Okay, I want people to understand that there's a multiplicity of different futures here. And I would say always start with the data, because what everybody here has said is that there is now this incredible ocean of data that can be mined and distilled and used to support decision making and institutional thinking. That's where Coventry began. Data's the oil and AI will be the engine, as it's been described. And you understand that students have access to this data and to digital approaches as well. I think Meti said, you know, student behavior is changing. Yeah, we know that. They're not abandoning Pete. Okay, but when they come to Pete, they'll have been on to StudyPortals, and you know, this is a complex world. This is not unidimensional. It's not 1977, as Lucy said. You know? So this is the challenge for the sector. Yeah, we got to up our game to engage with these guys who are driving innovation, and if we don't, their wave of innovation is going to crash over us.
Thank you, David. No, totally agree. And we will be following up after this event to find out how we can continue helping people to continue this conversation and work out how to navigate as they go forward. But we've got lots of questions from the audience. But David, I do want to give you the chance to also ask a question or two.
More opportunity to speak. Yeah, well, actually, I'm going to be a very vicious chairman now and give the panel plenty of time to speak. But I'd like the panel to give me short answers. And I mean, because I think AI is also crucial here, I'd like to come to Edwin, because Coventry signed up with all of these organisations, but Edwin and I have had a deep conversation about AI and the role that QS has in developing this. And I wondered, Edwin, if you could talk about this. You know, what is the reality as opposed to the hype around your journeys in machine learning? How does it add value?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think the added value actually comes back to the question that the panel handled around what does face-to-face look like? Because yes, expectations around face-to-face are evolving. But what does face-to-face mean? It means a highly personal, highly authentic, highly interactive way of counseling. And it was actually quite difficult to acquire for much of the history of international higher education. The great promise, I think, of the AI-assisted innovations that a number of us are now looking at is that it brings that highly responsive, highly personalized, highly authentic counseling opportunity more readily to a wider group of people, including people we don't currently serve. I mean, I'm a tremendous optimist, as I'm sure everyone is on the panel, about the growth of our sector. I mean, we've only just begun in the last 30 years. It's still just 4% of the globally enrolled tertiary sector students who study outside the country of origin. We're in a growth business here, but we're not reaching most of the potential students in many, many corners of the world. And that's the great opportunity. It's not a replacement for face-to-face. It's about finding ways to supplement the authentic counseling, personalized counseling experience.
So could I challenge you then, and maybe Meti, on, are you really growing the options for students? You know, just to give my credentials as somebody who's trying to understand, because actually, if you've got AI that looks as yours has done at, you know, I think you've got 10 years of 70,000 students, okay, you know inputs and you know where they went, okay?
Yeah.
Actually, by feeding back to students what's been successful for students in the past, you might just be reinforcing disadvantage. And we know from other social media companies, shall we say, that what the algorithms and machine learning feed to the student determines decision making. So it's not neutral. Maybe I could ask you that, and in a sort of friendly way to educators, and maybe then I could ask Meti also and see how you differ.
Great question, David. I mean, it is a concern. We all see how our data is being used by tech giants globally today. I think there are two steps there in mitigation. One is that you don't just use historical data, you use real-time data. You look at how the applicant is behaving when they're engaging with you in real time, and you keep your model up to date and educated. The other one, as I was illustrating earlier with the chatbot, live chat option, is that you give students the opportunity to reach out and to request and to seek that direct personal engagement. And then whatever profile they have, they've put themselves at the front of the list in terms of the calling priorities that we would have. I think those are two steps we're taking in terms of mitigation of that real concern that you highlight.
Can I put that to you then, Meti? Because, I'm a great believer, as you know, we're signed up with you, but it's Google all over, yeah? Don't do evil, yeah? First off.
Thanks, David. First of all, I want to say this. I don't think actually industry has seen any impact of the big data or AI. As a leader in the tech, we have been focusing hugely. I don't think industry has seen even 5% of. And the reasons for that is there's just so much data on every single application. Let me give you a fact. In the past 6 years, more than 500,000 applications has gone through ApplyBoard. More than 250,000 of that was last year. And for every single application, we collect more than 200 data points. So you ask, for example, what have we done to be able to enable the students that very necessary coming? We have created a program with the schools. We have to turn those data to the and say, hey, here's the demand. Look at the live data is extremely important compared to the data that's sitting there 10 years back. The industry has changed. People, what they want to study has changed. Country has changed. What the students go to United States today is very different than that. So I think really much the empowering the students and the recruitment partner, still there's so much benefit left. For example, one thing that we work very closely, I write 3 blogs in a week, Apply Inside, and we focus hugely on the data. There is more than $1 billion loss for institutions that they cannot estimate their enrollment number due to the visa transfers, conversion, X, Y, Z. So there is so much more to do, and we work very closely with our partners, the schools, to really nail down per schools, per program, how many students can they get. And I think the only driven behind that is the live data and the AI. But I think it's still yet we see way more big data and AI coming in the next week.
Agree, absolutely. So before I hand back to Amy, Edwin, you're the providers of the data. You're the oil that runs the system. AI, how soon is it coming?
I think we haven't seen much yet. Indeed, I think on the data front we've seen more. So I think Edward already mentioned that, but also we have a data business where we, for instance, help institutions to evaluate their program portfolio and know which programs are best to start next. On the AI side, yes, I think we're only just getting started there, and we have a huge data set. We have, for comparison to some of the last year, 151,000 confirmed enrollments. By far the biggest one in the world, as far as I know. So we have a lot of data, and many of that also beyond the enrollment. But it also comes to ethical questions, as I already hinted to before. And we've been thinking a lot about that with the team. We don't have a golden formula yet, and maybe it's a great topic for another webinar. But I would be happy to share kind of what we are deciding right now, at least, so that it doesn't become evil. So we
maybe quickly, because I think you're right, we should come back with another seminar, but I'm conscious we've got too highly competent people on this panel. That's my and Amy's mistake. Yeah, so if you can just quickly, and then we'll go back to Amy.
So we try to only use it as an encouragement if we know there's good fit. We never want to discourage a student, right? So then it becomes about, here might be an obstacle that you will run into if you really want to go to this university, because your fit this is what you're missing in your profile, whether financially or academically, or the fit with their interests, rather than saying this is not in the cards for you, or this is not that, because we have so many students as well coming and being very successful in the platform, where everybody would say this was impossible if you would hear about their background story. And yeah, we truly believe in impossible is nothing. So it's really difficult to make sure that the algorithm and the AI is being used
so we'll come back to that, and thank you, Edwin. So Amy, back to you as purveyor of difficult questions.
Sure. No, I mean, how you build the algorithm and continually evolve it is a very interesting question, which we could definitely explore. I'm actually going to, I mean, we have lots of questions, but we have a lot of people who are joining us who want to ask their questions. So I'm actually going to take another question from the audience. Now, Brian McNamara has asked, lead generation aggregators seem to differ a lot from the traditional agent. We're trying to evolve that word, aren't we, Meti? But from the additional recruiter who provides support from inquiry to enrollment, should lead generation aggregators be treated the same as traditional agents from the university perspective, or do we need a different approach? I mean, I think this is an interesting question. It's got lots of votes. I'm going to come to you, Ryan, first. I mean, do you think you should be treated the same by universities or separately?
I think it's a great question, and just very quick one. I can't help myself. Just on the data there as well, is that, you know, it's also about understanding students that have been successful through their courses as well, so that there should be data sharing for the industry now as well, so that at the end of the day, what we're talking about is the problem is we're democratizing access to courses around the world, right? So that there's more and more choice that is now happening for students. So what we all need to solve is that how are we going to be enabling them to be able to make the right choices? And that comes with both universities and partners and platforms starting to share more and more this type of information as well. But I think this is a great opportunity when it comes back to how does your question around how should we be viewed? Ultimately now, when you had master agents or big aggregators previously, it was a black box. There was absolutely no data. This gives the ultimate opportunity now for the industry to have complete access and optics around what is going on. So when we look at our model, again, it's a non-biased exchange. We have all the data. I mean, we should be working with governments. We should be working with a whole range of people outside of just education to be able to give complete optics around this. So I think for regulators now, what technology can provide is ultimate trust and transparency, because it's everything for people to view. I mean, for us internally now, we're rating all the agents on performance. We're looking at everything we're talking about, fraudulence and these types of things. It's for plain to be seen now as well. So if I'm a university now, I would actually now be thinking this is our great opportunity now to be able to have complete view of what the industry is. This is an opportunity for me now to be able to look at how am I going to get to these new regions? What are the best performing agents in these types of regions? Before that, it was really people literally getting on planes, working fantastic relationships. Now it's for all of us to see. So I think we all need to lean in together and start working more together around this.
Okay, so two questions quickly. I mean, you're capturing a lot of data. When do you stop that data capture process? Is students completing their course successfully at the end of the journey, or do you then capture where they go and work? I mean, is that like the grand?
That is the absolute ultimate. I mean, at the end of the day, what is education for? It's obviously providing people a better chance in life, and ultimately, it's working towards employment. And often we're forgetting about that. So I think the ultimate opportunity for us as thought leaders, I guess, here and with everybody listening today is how are we connecting through to employment? How is employment data now helping support the decision making of students? I mean, there's bias. There's the barbecue test, isn't it? As parents, You know, we've all got this kind of prejudice of where we want to send our kids because we think that that's going to provide them a better life. Yet there's job shortage in data scientists. You know, how are we serving this information up to counsellors to support students to make those decisions? And then how are we connecting that back to employment and employees in the future? And that is what we all should be sitting here trying to talk about and trying to solve.
Absolutely. And I'm sure Edwin and Edward and Meti, I'm sure a lot of you have got plans to build out your systems to increasingly capture that sort of post-study data.
Absolutely. That's our goal.
Meti, is that another goal of yours? I mean, it's really interesting. You mentioned your apply proof, but you know, that's another sort of vertical within ApplyBoard now, trying to make sure people know that they will get accepted. I mean, are you looking at that post-graduation experience too?
100%, Amy. If I can say, I think like what ApplyBoard has built today in the past 6 years is the fraction of what we have planned to build in the next 10 years. Like what a lot of people see and they trying to see what ApplyBoard does and they look at it is really fraction of it. I'm sure we will be able in the next few years get to the position that actually truly tell the students, go to these schools, go to this program, go to this city, because your main goal, as example, as Ryan said, if it's employment, you will be more successful, right? It's still, there is so much, and there's unfortunately no company really can ask the students, here's the question, tell me what is you want. We're still the fraction of the market, and the market that we are is still, it's so fragile that there's so much more tech and innovation can happen, and we are going to build a lot of those. But there are some stuff we're not going to get involved to.
Sure. So, but I mean, I totally swerved off topic, but to go back to the original question, if the university is watching thinking, okay, sounds really interesting, but how do I treat you? I mean, should they be considering you like another recruiter partner?
100%. And I think like one thing that frustrates me the most, that a school's contract hasn't changed in the past 20 years. We see the contracts that one of the reasons we don't just sign contracts with the school is there's so much issue with their contracts. For example, there are schools that if you sign, they own your IP. As a tech company, that's a joke, right? So I think like they definitely should see the two. If our business model is just getting a recruitment fee, that doesn't make us what hundreds of other traditional recruitment partners are. But definitely, I think there's so much room to improve, and that's one of the reasons we never focus on, hey, let's add 200 to school this month. We could have done it if we wanted to just sign closed eyes. We always step back, say the terms that we're signing, how this is going to impact us. There is GDPR, there is countries that you need to follow privacy and policy. At ApplyBoard, our security score is 790. Average in the educational is 630. If you want to really like something that no one really talks in to make sure how the students' data, recruitment data is safe, you have to do a lot more. And contract of the school is part of that you really need to make sure that both parties are safe.
Amy, can I just, I'm sure Lucy would want to come in on this, but first off, could I just ask Adam, okay, on this point about employability, because of course in the, okay, so this is a global conversation, but you know, I think all of these markets, China predominates, yeah? So we're talking about employment prospects for those 50% of students that come from China to the UK. Are you in China? I mean, I don't think any of the partners here represented, apart from QS, have got a bit of stuff in China. So how do we serve the employment prospects of people in countries that you're not in?
Yeah, it's a good question, David. So yeah, we've been active in China now for 10 years, and the big trend that we've noticed is Chinese students used to come to Australia and Canada and the US because there were better job opportunities there. And as most people would know, that's reversed. There's much better job opportunities back home, which it makes the task of tracking the students post-graduation more difficult. But I think the best that we can do is when we get into a relationship with the university, it's not about setting short-term enrollment targets. It's about the university saying, in 3 years, these are our international goals. What are our strengths? What are your strengths? How can we work together to get there? And then I think it's a matter of sharing as much data in both directions as possible and really closing the loop on recruitment. So recruitment should be driven by student outcomes. And I think that's the single biggest advantage that these kind of digital platforms can bring to the industry.
Okay, great. So Lucy, I mean, I got a 19-year-old, okay, he's just gone to university. UK student, but generally, for global students, employability and BridgeU and this whole change in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think there's a reason why we call, the category we operate in, albeit it's a relatively new one, university and careers guidance software. So it's exactly taking the two combined, David. So looking at a transition into post-secondary. And frankly, over the last 7 years, it's been fascinating having a bit of a front seat to the international school sort of community and seeing in particular sort of two major trends, I would say, one of which is that we see this huge growth in the range of study destinations that students are considering, increasing by, a few percentage points every year, which for our size of audience is pretty meaningful. So more and more students applying to many more destinations as part of their own journey, their own experience. And then the second thing is exactly what you just mentioned, David. It is the importance of understanding how career prospects and how job families and the skills that 14-year-olds are acquiring today, how that does a dual mapping. And we have this within the sort of entirety of our guidance program and curriculum, which is in part, it's about supporting students in the early stages of self-discovery and reflection so that they can get onto a path which has a kind of dual aims. It has a near-term plan to transition, perhaps even within the secondary school, to focus on a more specific set of subjects. There's a medium-term plan, which is for most students transitioning into higher education, a course, a college, a university in some country. And then of course, the longer-term plan is, how are the skills that they're accruing over the course of that 4, 5, 6, 7-year journey? How does that then position them for the global labor market? So I think it's a hugely important consideration, and I agree with not trying to kind of divorce the two conversations.
And I mean, this links to that earlier point about people's obsession with agents and aggregators, and now people are obsessed with recruiting students to a particular institution when we should be thinking about how we get how we help employers to identify where their students of the where their employees of the future. I mean, Edwin, you've done some interesting work on this with TU Eindhoven. I know your guys were sharing with me the other day. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as an example of where your system is going, all of you are going?
Yeah, and I think it's all around indeed the struggle. So I think there are 3 pockets here. One is the students' desire to, how do I make my future, my dreams come true, right? And education is one step on that long journey. So there we can do better, and we're seeking solutions. The data set is growing. That's good news. Then it's universities that want to attract high flyers that are good, bring good employment to the region, and there's also work for employers that want to attract high flyers. And actually, so let's not forget we can help employers here, particularly in very scarce demands, and they use the platform in 2 ways. One is to fish in front of the net, to reach students early, just before they graduate, of the right type, so that they can recruit them into the companies. But it's actually even more talent analytics, because big employers, they are very interesting to know which students are graduating from which universities, how internationally mobile they are. So we are giving them that intelligence as well, helping them not only to recruit those students, but also to engage with the right institutions in partnerships, so that they find that very, very scarce talent.
Great. Back to you.
I would love, we've done a lot of projects with governments on employability data, because it would be so nice if it would be just available, and many governments have initiatives, but the problem is the international comparability. And again, is it so important, as Lucy said, many students are comparing destinations, and then if the data is not comparable, you have to be careful not to misguide a student, right? And that's the last thing we would do, because that's against the reason why we're in this business. So we've actually just gathered the data from the students themselves.
Sure. Big ethical dimension, Amy.
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to go to some more questions from the audience, actually. Although I am also interested, somebody mentioned earlier about growing the actual whole wider pool, and I think that's a really interesting question, which I might come back to. Leave that with all of you, and in terms of how you're actually trying to grow your audience cohort, your student cohort, beyond the ones who would always just traditionally find you. And I guess BridgeU, Lucy, you sort of point to the fact that you're trying to educate your cohorts. But I'm going to leave that there. If we have time, we'll come back to that. I think that's an interesting question or point. But let's go back. And there are quite a lot of questions here aimed at aggregators, but I'm going to go for some of them. So sorry if you're not going to be asked this question, but let's go for another question from James Burnett, who also had quite a few votes. Traditional agencies provide a wide range of support, help with visas, accommodation, liaising with institutions. How do aggregators deal, if at all, with these add-ons? Meti, you first.
Thanks, Amy. I think like one of the reasons we work with the vetted recruitment partner is that those services and supports that is required for the students doesn't get faded. So I think like people need to really notice what really that companies like ApplyBoard does is simplify the process, provide more options to the students that lead to the success of the students. But we definitely, where we can step in, provide a knowledge to our recruitment partner or students around the visa, counseling. We're always going to be there and supportive. And there's always that there is a perception that platforms like ApplyBoard, we never talk with the students. That's very wrong. We actually do talk with the students and support them. We don't poach the students of our partner. That's a different thing, but we always support our recruitment partners. We even like get our own list to our vetted recruitment partners. So I don't think necessarily like platforms like ApplyBoard are removing those services that are needed to be provided to the student. It really adds more value to the partners and the schools that they can be presented at the same time in front of thousands of recruitment partner, or for the recruitment partner, that they don't need to kind of send their students to a school, because one recruitment partner can work with 5 to 10 schools max. And that's where the retention, all those challenges comes up, because now I have forced to just send my students to 5 schools because that's where I can make money. Where they work with ApplyBoard, now they can send the students to thousands of these schools and programs. So that's, I think, where the caveat is.
Okay, Ryan, what would you say on this point? I mean, do you enable people on your platform to also engage with accommodation? I mean, this we've seen, and I should preface this question by saying we've written and covered a lot on the pie about many agency businesses and other sort of ecosystems, digital app ecosystems, where accommodation and access to finance, I know sort of leverage Edu in India do a lot of access to loans. We've seen a lot of innovation in this space, but would you say at Adventus, I mean, from what I'm following from you, Meti, you're saying we enable recruiters to have a huge range to the best schools. That's what we're doing, and the rest they can do themselves, because we're making the main meat and bones.
We do work with other platforms such as finance. It hasn't been our focus because we don't want to get like our focus to a spread thin. Nothing stops us tomorrow to work with the best accommodation company. One is there is lack of taking those services. There's not many people doing it. And certainly we are building our platform the way that becomes Shopify for this industry, that people can plug in. I always said at ApplyBoard, we work with everyone, including everyone this call. We're always happy to work with people because we all have one mission, which is educating the students. There are millions of students with no higher access, right? But do we do today the accommodation? We don't feel we should, but we always can do that in the later stages.
Okay. Which brings us back to your earlier point about there's a lot more iteration and innovation to come. Okay, Ryan, what would you say to this point?
Yeah, I mean, our focus is always how do you make the complex simple and the simple compelling? And I think around this, we are a marketplace. We don't have bias in that. And what we're trying to do is trying to create a seamless experience for the student. And, you know, when you're talking around quality assurance, I mean, we've got bringing in, you know, RPA in our super center now in Noida in India to make sure robotic process automation. So we're really working through technology to make that a really seamless experience within the platform. And at the same time, if you think about, if you're looking about we're a B2B booking.com, think of it that way. There is always that opportunity then to be able to present without bias the various other opportunities that students are going to need whilst they're traveling as well. It is highly fragmented at the moment, you know, and everybody knows that and sometimes there is bias in the system. So what we want to be able to do is take that out, offer that through the marketplace so that the students have be able to make the very best decisions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and squeeze a couple more questions in. We are running quite close to time, but the most popular question voted for by 66 people is, I think, coming down to ultimately the sort of compliance of the aggregator funneled application. So let's adjust to that question. Sitting down with a parent student for months versus a student filling in a form online, how can aggregators really assure universities of the quality and legitimacy of a student? I mean, Adam, I'll come to you first because you're enabling applications obviously as well. Do you want to take this one first, and then we'll go to the hot seat couple, Ryan and Meti?
Yeah, so I think if it's done well, a digital platform can actually add another level of compliance and scrutiny on top of the processes that are already happening. So I think from what we found, the best way to tell if a recruitment partner or an agent, whatever you call them, is trustworthy is to work with them for 10 years and check their results and get to know them, have staff in their city who intimately know them and walk in and out of their office every single day. Now, if you've got that relationship in place, you put on top of that some automated processes that help with compliance, document checks, financial background checks, and plus you can see the outcomes of their previous students, then you've really got an extra layer of security. And that's especially important as more and more governments around the world, if an institution gets something wrong, it gets harder for them to bring in more international students. So I think in Australia, we're kind of lucky. When we wake up every morning, we have to think compliance first. And that's the way that we've built our platform and approached that challenge.
Meti, quickly back to you on that same question.
For sure. I can say again with the number, we see far less activities that they're not right today compared to 3 years ago, which our number of application is 10 times more. And I think the only reason is through the process that we have built. We have like a scoring for our recruitment partners, same as credit scoring. And when we see a person that they're not good fit for our mission, we'll just cut our access with them. So I think as long as the company stay with that, it's very hard to answer it in 30 seconds, but
I know.
Like I said, we receive less challenges today compared to 3 years ago. Our number has been like 10 times more, so.
Okay, I've got one more question.
Let me really quick on that, Amy, if you like.
Oh, yeah, we're very.
It was really, it's interesting. You know, it's that old saying, you teach people how to treat you, right? And it's like with a platform as well. The market starts to learn between right and wrong. When we started, there was around 30% of applications that we would be rejecting, right? But as you start educating the market, that's down roughly to 18% now. And what we do have is as I mentioned, for every 10 applications, we're getting 9 offers now from institutions as well. So I think, you know, we are that firewall, and because it's learning and you are learning throughout that period of time, the market starts to adapt to that as well. So I think institutions, are starting to really value that.
Okay, I've got one more question I want to squeeze in because Edward, we haven't heard from you for a while, and I thought we started off by talking about machine learning and AI. And Pieter, I will come to you as well. We started with you. I will come to you to the sort of final questions on this. Does machine learning and AI take the personal touch out of an application? So let's come to you, Edward, first on that question, and then Pieter.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I don't think it does because you know the algorithm, the AI assisted technology is not making the decision. What it's doing is helping us to prioritize workload and to make sure that we are, you know, commencing that one-to-one, face-to-face, whether it's online or virtual or whether it's in person, counseling opportunity that every applicant wants. So no, I don't think so. I think there's a way in which we can actually, as Ryan was saying, you know, democratize the process here, include many more people in the opportunity funnel, and multiply the number of conversations that we have.
Thank you. Pieter, your thoughts on that same question?
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with Edward on that. I'd add one thing, that I think the way to take bias out of an algorithm is to add a human, and the way to take a human out of bias out of a human is to add an algorithm. And if you can get the two working together really well, then I think you get the best of both worlds. And that's what we're focused on with all our tech development. You know, it's about building a better process for our students and for our university partners. You know, that's the real goal in what we're doing, get that advice right.
Thank you so much. We are officially at time. David, I don't know if you want to say a couple of closing remarks. I just want to remind you all, we have the Pi Live virtual conference coming up in October. We are imagining how else we might cover these very topics in student recruitment, the future of recruitment.
Thank you, Amy. I mean, first I want to say thank you to all of the panelists. Actually, a lot of common views there, actually. Okay, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't buck markets. look at the student, okay? Do not be confused by agent and even agent regulation, yeah? We all know that we get our license taken away if we don't behave properly. So I don't see another layer of regulations going to help, okay? Think about how you are going to engage with these people, because I'm already struggling, yeah? Because I've got my targets to hit. You cannot do everything that you're currently doing, okay, in a traditional way and work with these guys. We have to change ourselves. We have to understand what they can do, and we have to learn to let go and trust these guys, because they're going to be much better at it than we are. We need to be good at what we're good at. Thank you.
Thank you. And I had another poll I forgot to launch, so I've just very quickly launched it to see which items are top of your wish list when it comes to a simplified and successful international student recruitment. That's what we're all talking about at the end of the day. And while we are live polling, we are looking at high certainty of conversion from application being top of the wish list. Okay, like as I was saying, we have plenty more events, iterations planned. We have a live pie chat with Leverage Edu coming up on Wednesday. We have webinars weekly, Pie Live. David and I will be doing more exciting things on this topic. Thanks so much for so many of you joining us. Thanks for being patient, asking questions. Ryan, Edward, Adam, Lucy, Meti, Edwin, and Pieter. Really appreciate you either waking up early or staying up late to join us. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Hopefully see you all in soon.